Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Sorry for the delay. It took a lot longer than usual to sort through the news with the massive outpouring of UBI creates jobs tweets. Excellent work, gang. Remember to start making those stimulus needed clips and prepare for the week of action ahead. Lots of good news for UBI today and bad news for the country. Let's get to it. Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, and Ed Markey have finally officially backed a basic income bill, and it is their own. That's right, we have yet another basic income bill floating around. They call it the Economic Crisis Support Act, and it is $2,000 per person, maxing out at 3 children, means tested at $120,000 income mark. The payments would be retroactive to March and last until 3 months after the Health and Human Services Department has declared the public health emergency to be over. The legislation would also bar debt collectors from taking the payments and would deliver them regardless of whether people have a Social Security number or filed for taxes last year. It's cool that it's retroactive to account for how dismally slow the response to the crisis has been, but otherwise, I just don't think that more bills doing essentially the same thing are what we really need right now. We already have one real UBI bill and one means-tested bill. Let's get everyone rallied behind whichever of those has the best chance of passing and work to improve them from there. What really matters is getting recurring payments going for an extended period. If we get people that income for a few months at least, UBI is almost certain to follow, in my opinion. People will see what an enormous boon it is, and that it doesn't make everyone lazy or destroy the economy, and they will want it to continue and place any necessary pressure on their elected officials to see that done. We just need to get to that point, and we don't need everyone making their own pet bill so they can grab some limelight, in my opinion. Focus, push, achieve. Audrey 3 on Twitter asked her congressman, Pennsylvania's Malcolm Kenyatta, whether he supports UBI, and he responded with a simple and emphatic yes. Hard to say if he really knows what UBI is, or is just referring to one of the means-tested recurring payment bills, or what, but it's good news. Hopefully we will see his name appear on the co-sponsors list soon. Caitlin Germain got basically the same response from her representative, Jim McGovern, who said he 100% supports UBI. The dominoes are falling, gang. Keep badgering your representatives because it works. The problem we're having with getting UBI passed is that Republican legislators are still not seeing that UBI is the best thing for the economy. They aren't getting that the biggest constraints on supply right now are lack of demand, which is being suppressed by uncertainty, fear, and just not enough money to spend. Businesses can reopen, but they will just go bankrupt if customers don't return as well. A recent study of mental health supports this. Researchers from San Diego and Florida state universities found that severe mental distress has increased by more than 7 times for Americans since the start of the crisis. Has the rise been in those most vulnerable to the virus, the elderly? No, very much the opposite. Distress increases as age decreases, suggesting the main source is financial insecurity rather than fear of the virus. Those who have a steady income source of Social Security are the least distressed right now. It peaks particularly in those with children. Other researchers added, quote, uncertainty is causing Americans a great deal of psychological distress, end quote. Another article drew on projections from professionals at the Wellbeing Trust of anywhere from a minimum 28,000 to a maximum of 150,000 deaths of despair resulting from the economic crisis. The only way to remove everyone's uncertainty over financial security, and thus to save the economy, is to guarantee income. This is what legislators must understand before it is too late. Indirect methods such as tax cuts and unreliable methods such as one-time payments will not restore broad consumer spending. Only guaranteeing income to everyone for at least the next few months will bring the economy back. A tweet by James Ellers, founder of Forward United, reinforced the dire state of the country when he pointed out that the number 3 trend on Twitter was hashtag Cash App in Bio, right behind hashtag Trump Depression, showing that there is an absolute plague of people desperate enough that they are begging for money online. Will America, the richest country in the world, be reduced to a country of beggars? If this doesn't highlight the need for a UBI, I don't know what will. If you haven't read Scott's article on how UBI accelerates the rate of innovation, I highly recommend you follow the link below, read, and bookmark it. He goes through and likens the free market and innovation to natural selection, and then explains how reduction of risk for failure is the best thing we can do to increase experimentation and innovation, which of course leads to UBI. I particularly appreciate the quote from Buckminster Fuller that 1 in every 10,000 people will make a discovery capable of supporting the rest. That is how valuable innovation is to society. What's more beneficial, having people work as robots at menial labor, or having them free to experiment and discover? Right now, most of those who could be making breakthroughs for our species are stuck in the 9 to 5, with little time and security to warrant such grand pursuits, and the potential of our species is bleeding out as a result. Anyway, it's a good article to share and help people understand why UBI is so important and why 100% employment is a counterproductive goal. Warren and AOC have also developed a bill, theirs pertaining to monopolies. It is the aptly named Pandemic Anti-Monopoly Act, which seeks to place some temporary restrictions on the merging of large companies to mitigate the cannibalization of smaller companies being absorbed into giant monopolies, which is very much happening and happens with every economic crisis. An article on the subject included some highly concerning statistics, including that 75% of industries in the US have become 90% less diversified. 90% less diversified. That the wage suppression by monopolies has reduced median wages by 23%, that mergers typically increase prices by 7%, and that product markups have tripled since 1980. In other words, free market competition is dying, and it's lowering wages and raising prices. We have that on the one end, and then we have automation on the other end, lowering wages and laying people off. Both are combining to reduce consumer income while increasing costs, leading to economic decline as consumer buying power drops like a rock, driving lower sales, driving more layoffs, and the downward cycle continues into recession. All of which makes perfectly clear that wages are not a reliable source of income anymore, and we need a guaranteed income to cover at least basic needs and to bolster failing wages. That said, we also need to combat monopolies or capitalism will fail as competition disappears and corporations are free to extort customers at will. An article from the New York Daily News quoted Yang saying that he thinks the appeal to reverse the court's decision on the primary has no chance to succeed, primarily because they aren't canceling other elections. Yang says they should be spending their time and resources reinforcing mail-in voting instead. Frankly, if they care about democracy and safety, that's what they should do. New stats have been released showing that 35% of low-income workers have lost their jobs, while only 9% of high-income workers have, reinforcing what we already knew, that the poor are hardest hit by this and every other crisis. It's actually grown the average wage by 8% simply by taking out so much of the lowest wages from the pool. Mike Broy here needs your help showing his grassroots support. Democracy for America is asking people to add their name to a petition for Mike to measure his support with the people. Please visit the link below. All it takes is a name, email, and zip code and clicking the button. It's the least that we can do to help get Mitch out of office. Heidi Briones had an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit today. You can check out the questions and the answers at the link below. Heidi is sounding the alarm as well. There are only 10 days left until her election day, and she needs to keep ads running in this crucial time. If you can spare a few bucks, Heidi can definitely use your support, and we could definitely use her support in Congress. Donation link is below. So I listened to my first episode of the Moving Forward podcast yesterday, and holy crap have I been missing out. The episode was based on trying to compromise on a sweeping foreign policy where the two hosts, one Democrat-leaning and one Republican-leaning, sketched out starkly different foreign policy platforms, then hashed out a startling consensus. Honestly, it's one of the best hours I ever spent. These guys are wicked smart policy wonks and do an amazing job coming to consensus on their real priorities when it seems impossible to do so at the start. Listening to this will restore some hope that our shattered country can come together to make progress. At least it did for me. This is how democracy and legislation should work. Highly recommended. Matt visited the Big Talk Little Talk podcast to talk Yang's campaign, minimum wage versus UBI, what's happening with the crisis and stimulus, democratic reform, etc. Check it out below. Finally, Yang had his Matrix watch party on Twitter and had quite a lot to say about it. It was rather interesting. Yang said that while watching The Matrix in theaters for the first time, he remembers leaning over and whispering to the person next to him that it was the greatest movie he's ever seen. He says Keanu Reeves is a national treasure, the music is underrated, he would definitely not go out on a window based on a sketchy phone call, that we are all batteries today because our data fuels the digital economy, that it's one of the most influential films of the past 25 years, but the last two were disappointing, that if he could download a skill, it would be cooking, that he wants a sequel where they try to wake everyone up en masse, that everyone in the theater cheered when Cypher died, that he's going to miss the theater since many will be closing for good, and finally, he asks if in real life most people would choose a pleasant matrix over an unpleasant reality, and concludes that they probably would. Personally, I would say that people have been doing that since forever and are increasingly doing so today. How often do people simply refuse to acknowledge facts and reality, instead substituting their own fantasies and rejecting any challenge to them on faith alone? Hell, that's the majority of politics these days. Case in point, Trump saying early in the pandemic that it won't come here and it'll all blow over in no time, or those saying that COVID is no more dangerous than the flu. Why accept a deadly pandemic when you can just make believe a better world? I think those of us living in the real world are a dwindling population. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Keep harassing your legislators, bookmark Scott's innovation article, add your name to the list of support for Mike Roy here, donate to Heidi if you can, listen to the foreign policy episode of Moving Forward, visit bailoutthepeople.com and take action, call the congressional switchboard to send the most effective message you can to your representatives, help recruit burners and others to the cause and get everyone to sign the petition and join the UBI movement, flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters, but particularly 5 calls a day, using the Resist Bot or Income Movement as easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread, and don't forget to Yang Daily.